Alright geezers, how are we? And
Alright geezers, how are we?
League.
And welcome to the Premier League preview show.
Wait, what are you doing?
With me, Tom Pridgeon.
It's my show!
Let's get into it.
Yes people, it's a special one today. We've got our first ever guest on the channel. I'm joined by my friend Tom Pridgeon. Tom, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm very excited.
It's funny because just before we started this, Tom, you said you were pretty nervous. You still, and the butterflies going, talk to me. Come on, it's a friendly environment here. They'll be all nice on you. How are you feeling?
Well, I mean, I guess the nerves kind of came in because of the weekend's results and looking forward into the new weeks, discussing football at this kind of time. Feeling a bit nervous about it all, to be honest. I don't want to make any rash decisions. It's the hope that kills you, as most football fans know.
The first game we're going to talk about is Leeds versus Arsenal. Top of the league, Arsenal, of course. Tom, how do you rate them so far this season?
I'll tell you what, the one thing I remember speaking to you at the end of last year and saying about how you didn't get top four and saying to you that, to be honest, I think fifth could be one of the best things that could happen to Arsenal right now. They very clearly weren't ready for the Champions League schedule. You've exceeded all my expectations, to be honest. I knew you'd do well because I really rate Arteta's philosophy. I like the fact he's bringing in young players. You've obviously got the youngest squad in the Premier League now, and to see that you've got, well, all but one loss, a very impressive record in the Premier League. I think it's something that a lot of other clubs can kind of look at and say, oh, okay, so we can maybe try and do a similar thing. Obviously, Arteta had his flack in the past. And I kind of create parallels between him and, say, a Lampard or a Gerrard. You know, they're getting their flack
No,
at the
you
moment.
can't. No, I'll stop you there. No, you cannot draw parallels between those two, because the weird thing about them is they're quite bad managers, you see. And the thing about Arteta is he's actually very good at this whole managerial business. So I'll stop you right there before you you go and compare them too much. Because I personally, as a football fan and someone who gets football and ball itself, I find that quite insulting, Tom.
Right, okay, well let me give one potential argument before you just jump down my throat again. But feel free to, it is your channel, I'm just a guest. Arteta had his fair share of flack, a lot of people saying, look, he's got a great squad, but he's a spineless manager, the way he's handled the Aubameyang situation was poor. I never agreed with it, but he had his critics. I think you look at Steven Gerrard, who's got his critics.
Okay, can I just say this? Sorry to buy on again. Do you not think that's the opposite of spineless, though, the way he handled that? I mean, it's his top player on the most amount of money in the club, and he said, look, you're not buying into what I want to do and how I want to take this club forward. You're getting out, whether you like it or not. Is that not the opposite of spineless? I think that's the most ballsy thing you really can do.
Yeah, no, I always backed that point as well. I think the point of view of the critics was that rather than trying to deal with a top player, and bring. That was always the one thing that people thought about Pochettino when he moved to PSG, was that he was not going to be able to deal with the egos, and they thought that he was kind of weak-willed in that way, that he wasn't prepared to sort of deal with any confrontation. And people were saying the similar sorts of things about Arteta with Aubameyang. I think I'm with you on this one. I never really agreed with that. I always thought that, he's putting his own mark on it, and as you say, I think that's quite a ballsy thing to do, to just say, no, it's my way or the highway, and as it turns out, Aubameyang took the highway. It's kind of worked out for him, I guess, but it's also very much worked out for Arteta.
Because Leeds are a strange one, because I rate Jesse Marsch as a manager, and I feel as though you presume they're doing better than they are. I mean, they're winless in their last 5 Premier League games. Their form at the moment goes draw, loss, and they, of course, as you say, they lost to Crystal Palace at the weekend as well. I feel as though their style's a little bit too gung-ho. They don't really have a second gear that they can kind of move into to try and manage the game. It's kind of all or nothing in that sense. What do you reckon about that?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I remember watching one of your recent videos and you were saying that you can't, football's a lot more nuanced, pardon me, than just, go out there and show a lot of spirit. The Leeds example really does support your point, I guess, because people like to think of, Jesse Marsch's way, the kind of the Red Bull way, of being, high energy, dynamic, and whilst, sort of being fluid at the back as well. It's not like Bielsa where they just sort of launched everything forward and risked goals going in. There seems to be a lot more structure and depth to the Leeds system under Jesse Marsch.
I do take to Jesse Marsch, and I like what they're trying to do. I like the players that they've brought in, and I like the style. I think it's entertaining at the very least, and it's a more sensible and effective way of playing Premier League football than what Marcelo Bielsa was trying to do with them. But
absolutely.
I reckon Arsenal will come through as 3-0 winners in this match.
I think 3-0's a bit harsh. I think they're going to make it a lot more difficult for you.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm going to say 2-1 to Arsenal.
Nice one. Because Tom, you and I quite notoriously tend to bicker quite a lot as well, and you've been quite diplomatic and fair. Are these the butterflies we were talking to as well? Is that what this comes down to? You're a little bit jittery.
No, I think it's more the fact that it's very hard to argue that Arsenal are actually quite good now, whereas last year you weren't, when you absolutely flapped it against Newcastle. So it was a lot more easier to give it to you. But watching you this year, it's very, very difficult to really give it to you when you're playing very well. So.
Well, speaking of teams that aren't playing very well, in my opinion, which is a nice little segue onto our next teams, and that is Spurs versus Everton. Spurs are third in the league. They have had 1 loss all season, 2 draws, and of course 6 wins. They've lost just one of their last 19 Premier League meetings against Everton, and that was on the first day of the 2020-21 season. Tom, talk to me. Where do you think this game's going?
Difficult one, because I don't know if you watched the game on Sunday at Everton Man United. First of all, weird time for a kickoff. 7 o'clock on BT Sport on a Sunday. Very strange. But I don't know if you watched the game, but it was so uninspired from Everton. Even against Brentford when they lost 3-2 and Burnley when they lost 3-2, you kind of saw that at least there was, modicums of effort being put in. Everything just seemed so broken in the first half. I don't know what your thoughts were on it.
I think it's an interesting one because, of course, Iwobi got Everton started off really nicely, and to be fair to him, he's really taken, to that central midfield position very, very well. He's a different player and he's absolutely made for it. Fair play to Lampard, because I do give Lampard stick because I think he's a bit of a PE teacher, but I do think that that's a brilliant managerial move from him, and he's got the best out of him. But I know what you mean. I feel as though with Everton, though, I don't ever watch them feeling particularly inspired. That's not me trying to have a go at them, but I never watch Everton thinking, this is, rip-roaring, exciting, dynamic football. I feel as though that's just kind of how it is with them.
I'd say that's slightly harsh. Okay, look, they don't play dynamic football like a Leeds do, or
an Arsenal,
Okay, granted, an Arsenal. Their style is very different. Obviously, for 1 week they had the best defensive record. I'm not sure if that's still intact.
They're tied. They're now
game.
Tied with other teams as well. Yeah.
So you look at Cody and Tarkowski, and they're very much central to the team. I think Cody's got the most passes for Everton at the moment. He's so integral to that team and the way they play, and being such a linchpin at the back. I don't think Everton should really expect this season to be the team that will pass their way through teams. I think in the Premier League they have some at the 16th most passes, which for a team that is aiming eventually to get into Europe, that's nowhere near. Look, Everton's expectations this year cannot be anything special, and so going into this game, I think Everton fans just need to understand that it's going to be a rough weekend. It's going to be a rough Saturday evening. Spurs
go into the game, I think they're on their longest winning streak since 2016-17 at home. They've won their last 7 at home, and they previously got 14 in a row there. It's one of the home form sides that Everton really could be coming up against.
I do have a question though. Obviously, as an Arsenal fan, there's the North London derby. It's probably the 2 teams in the Premier League at the moment who are closest in terms of who's better than whom. The 2 derby teams. Are they still a worry for you? I know you're sitting pretty at the top of the league at the moment, but you've got to remember that Conte does, and you did obviously beat them in the North London derby, but Conte does have the pedigree to show that, we mean business this year.
Yeah, now Tottenham are always a bit of a concern, to be honest, because I've made this point to you before as well with other clubs that have their local rivals. Like Everton, for example, I feel as though there's that weird sense of comfortability because they know they'll never be bigger than Liverpool because of trophies and history and all that sort of thing, wherever you want to put it. With Spurs, feasibly, they could do it in our lifetime, and them getting to the Champions League final was the closest they've ever been to that, because I don't think they would have been, bigger than Arsenal because of winning that. But there is that fear they'd have a Champions League when we wouldn't, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I definitely do worry about Spurs. I feel as though they are one-dimensional, to be honest. Though I don't think they play good football. I think their results flatter them massively. I don't think they play good football. But on the other hand, you could say they're pragmatic, and they just get the job done. They've taken 3 points from 6 out of their 9 games. You know, they've done well. They've absolutely done well. And I think, you know, with a team that has Kulusevski, Son, and Kane, plus Richarlison as well, if you want to throw him in there, you've always got a chance. You've always got a chance, and I think that's not what Arsenal have at the moment. We're a better team. They have better players.
I do want to ask you about Richarlison actually, because obviously, you know, he left Everton an absolute god. They were singing his name every week. He was a real, he was a real driving force in keeping them in the Premier League. Scored some crucial goals for them, and then he's gone to Tottenham, and he's not exactly hit the ground running. He's not been bad, but I mean, it was always going to be difficult for him, wasn't it? What are your thoughts on Richarlison at Tottenham?
I was just glad he didn't score against Arsenal and pull out his stupid pigeon celebration, to be honest, because, oh my days, that would have been absolutely horrendous if he'd done that. He's
I must say I love the pigeon celebration. But...
Oh my god. He's the archetypal, you hate him if he plays against you, you love him if he plays for your club. He's the absolute definition of that, like a Diego Costa, but more of a wind-up. He's a good player, I just don't think he's as much of a level raiser as maybe people thought he would be at the time, because I don't think their attack's better this year than it was last year. Definitely not. The second half of last season, their attack was frightening.
Conte will want him to go out there and, you know, give it his all and, you know, show the Everton fans, you know, what, you know, that he really has kicked on to kind of prove a point. So I imagine he'll start. To be honest, I imagine he'll score.
I think he'll score too. I can just feel that one coming. But, you know, Everton go into the game. They struggle in London. They've lost. You know, no team has lost more games in London than Everton. They've lost 84 Premier League games in London, and they're tied with Newcastle for that record, which is the sort of fact I'm sure all Toffees would love to hear going into this game. I don't give Everton too much of a chance. I think they'll fight hard, but I don't think it'll be enough, and I think it'll be a 3-0 win to Tottenham.
I think it's going to be, 4-1 to Tottenham. 4-1.
Right then, it's time for a Premier League classic match, this one. Manchester United at home to Newcastle. Man United, they've turned a corner. They're 5th in the league at the moment. So far this season, 5 wins, no losses. So, they wish, Jesus. 5 wins, no draws, 3 losses. They've lost 1 of their last 37 home games against Newcastle. They've won their last 5 league games against Newcastle at home and 5 of their last 6 Premier League matches. Tom, can they continue their momentum?
Look, they had a rocky start. They, you know, obviously lost horrendously to Brentford and quite poorly to Brighton as well. But I think, you know, we were speaking about how dismal Everton were at the weekend. But if you look at how well Man United played in that first half, they didn't give Everton a chance. They held the ball so well. Look, we know Man United like to be a counter-attacking team. But obviously Everton realised that and tried to play in a way that would make Man United carry the ball forward, didn't want to catch them on the break, and then they still managed to move the Everton players with their passing such that they could open up those gaps. And I think they're getting really, really good at that now. You saw how well the midfield were passing it. Bruno and Casemiro were linking up, drawing the defence in, creating that space in behind for the likes of Antony and Cristiano Ronaldo, who ended up scoring on the weekend. So yeah, I think there's no real reason why Man United can't continue in a similar vein. The one thing I will say though is Newcastle are a different kettle of fish to Everton.
Newcastle go into it and they had a bit of a streak of drawing. You know, they've drawn 5 times so far this season, and now they seem to have, you know, turned that corner themselves. They've won their last 2. I don't know where this one really goes. I think that on paper you'd say, if you're a betting man, you'd probably put down Manchester United to win it just because of who they are and the players that they have. But I think Newcastle will be fighting for every ball. And I wonder as well, because when Man United re-signed Ronaldo, his debut was against Newcastle and he scored a brace there. And I actually think that wound up Newcastle a little bit, because they were like, oh, we've let you have your fairy tale comeback, and it's almost like we've, you know, rolled over and let it happen. I feel as though they'll go back to Old Trafford now, wanting to rewrite some wrongs and say, look, we're not just going to count down to you, we're a strong outfit, we've turned a corner as well. And, you know, just going on over a year since they were taken over by the Saudis, they're going to, you know, want to mark it with a landmark victory themselves. I think that this one, I do think it'll be a draw. I think it'll be a Desmond 2-2. I just feel as though this match is set up for a quality match. It's one of those games, I don't know how you feel about this, it's one of those games where it feels like proper Barclays, this one. Do you know what I mean? Newcastle versus Man United.
Yeah.
It's proper heritage football.
Well, I mean, for those watching, I'm obviously a great deal younger than you. You're quite old now. I'm obviously a great deal younger. But my memories of Newcastle growing up...
And a great deal better looking. So anyway, that's just what... I've got something on the screen that says... I don't make up the rules.
I'm going to go with a draw as well. But saying that, it could go either way. It could go absolutely either way. But if I was going to go for a draw, I'm going to one-up you. I'm going to go 3-3.
So the last game that we're going to be looking at today is Liverpool versus Manchester City, the big one of the weekend. And over the last few years, this has been the game that we've all looked forward to the most, really. It's been the two most dominant sides over the last 4 or 5 seasons. But of course, now that has changed. Liverpool are 10th in the league. They've only won twice so far this season, 4 draws and 2 losses as well. It's their worst start in 10 years. That's the entirety of Klopp's tenure so far. The midfield for me is the source of all their problems. You know, it isn't functioning. Their fullbacks can't work as effectively, and that's, you know, meant Trent is getting caught out game in, game out. And we saw that with Martinelli having him on toast constantly. Saying that though, Trent's not going to be playing at the weekend. They're missing Trent, Matip, Diaz and Arthur Melo as well. Tom, do you have any hope for Liverpool in this match at Anfield?
It's the first time in a long time where someone's gone to Anfield and you think, I don't think Liverpool are going to win this. I really just don't see them. I don't see them coming away with a victory here. A draw, maybe. I just don't see a victory.
City aren't very good at Anfield though, typically. They've only won there twice in the Premier League era, only once since they got, you know, bought over in 2008, and that was behind closed doors as well. They never really seem to perform to their best at Anfield. What do you make of that? Do you think it's going to play a part, or do you reckon the Haaland effect, who apparently, according to Pep, is a bit of a doubt, but that's probably mind games. Do you reckon that their extra strength this season is just going to prove too much?
I do. I just think that I can't see how the City team of last year, you would have bet them to win at Anfield anyway. They obviously didn't, and that's fine. But then all they've done in the summer is gone out and strengthened. They went and got the hottest striker in the world at the moment.
The hottest.
I mean, even against
Look, not got a problem with
you know what? The team's 16th oldest in the league now. It was 4th youngest at one point, but now it's it's 4th oldest now or something like that. They've completely gone the other way. Players like Henderson need to be replaced with solid replacements. Harvey Elliott is not the replacement for Henderson. He's too attacking. Henderson was a lot more disciplined going up and down. Harvey Elliott isn't that. Harvey Elliott's I think he's a very good player, but he's not that. Nunez, he needs a bit of time. I would say I'm not worried. I think Liverpool fans should not worry about Nunez turning out to be a good player. I do honestly think he will come good eventually.
Agreed. He caused so many problems at the Emirates the weekend as well. He's definitely a good player, and he's a bit of a chance magnet as well. He always gets into the right areas. But ahead of this game as well then, so for me, I think that City will blow them away. I think they've got far too much quality, and for me, I'm going to say 3-1 to Man City. Haaland brace, and for Liverpool, I reckon Salah will get on the score sheet.
I can't see it being that high a scoreline, to be honest. It's certainly not at Anfield. I mean, I tend to think it'll be a 1 or 2-0. First of all, I know people will say, oh, you don't think Liverpool will score? I don't. I really don't think Liverpool will score in this one.
Okay, wonderful. So now what we're going to do is just going to rattle off the rest of the matches, give our predictions, and then next week when I do the preview with the next guest, I will very fortunately see how many games I have won against Tom by with a prediction. So, Brentford versus Brighton, I'm saying 2-1 to Brentford.
Brentford win, can't see it. I'm going to go 1-0 to Brighton.
Leicester Palace, 1-1.
Difficult though. That's difficult. You know what? I'm going to back you. I'm going to say 1-1 as well.
On the fence, love that. Wolves versus Forest. Desmond 1-1.
I'm gonna say a Wolves 2-0 win.
Wolves 2-0. Okay, Fulham Bournemouth 3-0 Fulham. Yeah, I went there.
2-1 Fulham. 2-1 Fulham. 2-1.
Southampton West Ham.
I've got to go with a West Ham 3-1. I know they're away, but I've got to go with a West Ham 3-1. I think Scamacca's really coming into his own. 3-1 West Ham.
Right. 2-0 1 West Ham. Aston Villa, Chelsea. 2-0 Chelsea.
I'm gonna go higher. I'm gonna go 4-1 Chelsea.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Tom, for joining me on this one. I hope you learned a thing or two about football because you have a lot that you need to be taught. Have you had a good time, Tom?
I was having a lovely time right up until that point.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, Tom. I hope you guys all have a cracking day and see you next time.